Hello thinkers, I wanted to talk to you quickly about the difference between inference rules when doing proofs and equivalence rules. Now, to shake things up a little bit, I've included this little nifty looking background so we can add a little excitement to the semester. Let's take a second and appreciate the excitement. Okay, now let's talk about the difference between inference rules and equivalence rules. When you have an inference rule, usually there's more than one, but not always the case. But what we're allowed to do here is go from what we're given to something we can infer. Isn't that handy? You can't go the other direction though. If you have R or S in the proof, you can't state any of these. It's only when you have these that you're justified in then writing this. And you have to have all of these and so on and so forth. You know how that works. Let's now consider, so this one, as a reminder, is the rule constructive dilemma. Now let's consider one of the equivalence rules. Now here I've put down the rule of material implication, and this is an equivalence rule. What that means is these two statements are logically equivalent, and that's represented by here this box or double colon. Now you've hopefully read about logical equivalence even back when we were doing truth tables. What that means is if we were to do a truth table of these two things, on the same rows they would always end up being true. There would never be an instance where in one row this would be true and this would be false. Because they're logically equivalent, we can substitute one for the other at any time we want in a proof. And while you may wonder why we would ever have to do that, it can be handy, I mean often is handy, in doing that in order to satisfy, for instance, an inference rule. Let's say that not P or Q was the antecedent of some conditional statement, and you needed to get the consequent in order to complete the proof. If you happen to have this at some point, you could then restate it in this form and then use that in the rule of modus ponens or something like that. But note, in an equivalence rule, if you get this in one line of the proof, you could say this in another, well, without the colons there. And if you had this in one line of a proof, you could say this. How we would do that would be something like this. Say you had line 1 here, and you were supposed to conclude dollar sign. It doesn't matter what we're trying to conclude. Next line of the proof, you could write something like this. Line 2, not P or Q, from line 1 by rule of material implication. Alright, I hope this has been a handy explanation of the difference between inference and equivalence rules. We'll see you online.